smart guy. He was understood football. Great motivator, competitive guy, and he had a sense of humor. He was a funny guy. Football is so tough. The grind of going down to football practice every day. Sometimes it's nice to have your leader have a sense of humor.
With the center ice, with some speed, it's Copp. Copp splits the D. He's in, scores! What a goal! Etta Copp, the best of his young career. What a beauty!
Hello there. Hope you're having a great Wednesday. Dodging those raindrops. Dennis 50 with you here. Maize and Blue Review. It's Michigan football today. And let's get her going here. I was going to send a email to Brandon Justice, and I never did. So we are going to be able to do that as the show is going on here. I'm going to have to send him a message and telling him that I'm going to do that right now. And so you're just going to have to deal with that. And we'll deal with it in 1 second. Hope everybody's doing good out there. Michigan's going to have a new president coming in, which is pretty cool. And let's see. How do I send a message while I'm on here? Can I do it? Let's think about it. And I might be able to. I'm here. Let's do it with this particular one. So today, by the way, we will be talking about Michigan gets a new president. And that president, let's see if I send it, is named Santa, which is something that is the first thing that I noticed. I've never met somebody named Santa before, or I've never even heard of anybody named Santa before. Let's see. I think I've done it here. I think I've sent Brandon Justice an invite to this show while it's going on, something I've never tried to do before. I'm going to be honest. I forgot that he was going to join us, but that's all right. Things happen. I'm sorry for, me looking over here on the other screen and everything else, but the good news is that we will get a great guest coming up here momentarily if it worked. Doesn't always work. And I guess we will find out in moments. This is a show where we're here weekdays at 1:00, talking about the latest in Michigan sports and that new president that we are going to talk about. You see OM's feedback coming in right off the jump saying, I heard the new president, Santa, is going to be aggressive in name, image, and likeness. Yeah, well, St. Nick, St. O, Santa Claus is coming to town, and I don't know much about him, but I did read what Josh Henschke, he had a story about him, publisher of Maize and Blue Review, and you're right, OM. He likes athletics. I saw in the story that Josh put up on Twitter, I was reading some of the messages, and there was somebody from Cincinnati where Santa was at, and they said that Santa was a great president, and they loved Santa. And Santa Claus or Santa Ono is coming to town. It kind of feels like Christmas in July, because here is Brandon Justice, who is joining us. I have to apologize to him. I didn't send him the link to the show, but I was talking with him earlier in the week, and he said, yeah, I'll be good to go. And then, he's like, where's the link? What's going on, Brandon? It's great to have you with us.
Happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing good. There's a lot of things to talk about. It's one of these things where you look, this is what I had on tap. I didn't send you the rundown, but I think you can handle some of this. Michigan is bringing in a new president. We've got some recruiting rumblings, and then we have something about the season. I was going to make some not predictions, but just give some thoughts on the upcoming season. How does that sound?
Sounds like a plan.
And then anything that you might have to talk about. Let's get to the season thoughts first. There's a staff writer from ESPN named Bill Connolly. He puts together. It's not a preseason ranking. He calls it his SP plus projections. And are you familiar, Brandon, with these projections?
Yeah, I mean, S&P Plus is for me. I've always enjoyed it. I think it's always been a not just serviceable but reliable projection. And so I remember when last season, right around September came around, Michigan had just won their first game, and I think it was after the Washington game, if I'm not mistaken, that S&P Plus had Michigan. At the time, it used to be S&P Plus. Now it's just SP. They got rid of the and sign, but SP Plus had Michigan number 8, and that was when Michigan had like just cracked the top 25. I think like number 24 at best. And so, SP Plus typically gets out ahead of those kinds of things, and oftentimes the projections are seen as a little bit overzealous or maybe underwhelming. But more times than not, when the season plays itself out, you can look back at SP Plus's week 2, week 3, week 4 rankings, and really you find some reliable information for the long term.
Well, this isn't nothing against Joel Klatt. I actually like him as a broadcaster, but last month he was like, hey, these are the teams that I think will be in the top 10. And he had Michigan somewhere around 8 or 9. He had the top 5, and then he had the other kind of teams that he thought would be there. And he had Michigan right around 8 and 9. And the thing about Conley is that he looks at his projections. He looks at the returning players. Sounds like a good idea. He looks at recent recruiting, also something that is a nice variable. Recent history, however, he uses that. He calls it a minor piece of the puzzle, but better with than without. And then he puts in a couple things that would probably be confusing and take a long time to explain. But SP Plus tempo and opponent adjusted measure of college football efficiency. So after a while, it sounds good, to me, what he's doing here. But he revealed, and you don't have to be an ESPN insider, which is good news for this part about, let me take this away, for this part that I'm going to put up here on the screen, Brandon, and that is that this is Conley. This was what he has said about he did a Big Ten East projection, and he said it's easy to overreact to the Big Ten East title for the Wolverines. Jim Harbaugh in Michigan got the proverbial monkey off their backs, beating Ohio State for the first time in 10 years, winning their first conference title in 18, and scoring their first college football playoff bid. They did so with panache, physically dominating the Buckeyes defense to the tune of 42 points and 297 rushing yards. It was a statement win that reminded everyone of the Wolverines' ceiling. They are projected 4th. That's the money quote in SP Plus in 2022, and it will have a shot at a college football bid number 2. So all of those numbers and everything else, you could say, well, what does it mean? Well, Michigan's ranked pretty high in this SP Plus, and if you're a Wolverines fan, being top 4, that's good news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, we've kind of had this summer of negativity because of NIL and recruiting for Michigan. And some of us have kind of gotten caught up in that and forgot about the fact that they're about to have a really good season for the most part.
I'm raising my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting caught. I get caught up in it.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I thought you were raising your hand to say. For a minute, I was like, "Oh my god, I interrupt him."
No.
So yeah, I mean, again, like Michigan's going to have a really good season. On paper, like they have all the makings of what we were talking about here in SP Plus. Returning production, to me, returning production is as important as anything in college football, especially offensively, because of the rhythm that you have to get in from an offensive perspective between your quarterback and your receivers. Defensively, I feel like returning production matters just like marginally less. I mean, matters nearly just as much, but marginally less, because a quarterback developing chemistry with his targets is like it's a work in progress, and it's far more of a downfall. It's a must have, and you don't really have to have any sort of like connection that specific on the defensive side. Really, it's more just chemistry among your defense, a leader to call out on the mic and then in the back end. So Michigan's returning production offensively is second to none, right? Like, there's not many teams in the country that have one better than it. And we know, as people who have paid attention to the team as much as we have over these past few, forever, I should say, but especially as, covering the team with media, we've seen firsthand how important those who are returning are. And I know that that's pretty much the definition of returning production, but to those listening who maybe haven't heard that analytic before, whatever you want to call it, that metric, take a look at the offense this year and take a look at the offense last year. Look at how successful it was last year. And then think about the fact that they're going to, we know for a fact they're going to open things up this year. There's a new offensive coordinator taking over for, the former Gaddis and all of that, and Matt Weiss and Sharon Moore. Most of the things will stay the same. But these concepts they brought last year, which seemingly came from Weiss and the Ravens, that Trevor McHugh's dropping a really good story on. You guys should all pay attention when that comes out. It's going to be really cool. He does the comparisons between Weiss's offense and with the Ravens, and the Ravens' offense comparisons to Michigan's last year. And I anticipate that being a lot of what we see in the upcoming season. On top of that, J.J. McCarthy's back. Cade McNamara is back. These are impact players. Blake Corum is back. 3 of the 5 offensive linemen that were the team's best O-linemen, plus they upgraded center in Ole. I mean, so, and then you talk about the receiving core, both tight ends are back. That's unheard of. Like, Michigan hasn't had an opportunity like this or a situation like this where they return this type of production offensively since I can remember, Dennis. I don't know if you maybe can come up with an example, but as long as I've covered the team, they've always had to replace much more than what they're replacing this year, which is very little. And I believe, like we've seen in college football, it's an offensive game. Defense, 110%. I think Georgia was an anomaly last year where they were defensively led. I don't know if that's going to happen year in and year out. I think you need a really good defense, but I think your offense kind of has to be your X factor, in my opinion, at the top tier of college football. I mean, like the college football playoff. Georgia, I think, again, historic defense last year. Not going to see that again. And so Michigan sets up to do what the S&P Plus is projecting them to do. And again, these aren't rankings from humans. These are computer rankings based on all of these, all the criteria he listed. And so I think they're completely justified because of that. And you can see why. I mean, it's right in front of us as to why these projections are what they are. The only question, Dennis, is what? I mean, it's Michigan, Ohio State, right? Like, that's the one where if they're getting to the college football playoff, they're projecting them to beat Ohio State. And that's the big conversation.
Yeah, I think once in the Harbaugh era, and maybe it's a cautionary tale because it was just 2019 that I looked at, Michigan had a returning of starting quarterback and Shea Patterson. They were relying on Zach Charbonnet, who was coming in as a highly touted running back, but most of the offensive line, it looked like it was as good as on paper as it had been in a decade. Then the playmakers, from Donovan Peoples-Jones to Tariq Black to, I mean, you go down the line, there are a hell of a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And it never did pan out. I think Patterson got hurt on the first play of the game or the first play of the season. In the first game, and it never really did pan out that way. You're talking about the anticipation of them opening up. I think it's really easy. Everybody would agree that in the first certainly 3-4 games that people are going to be watching the quarterback battle. I anticipate people complaining about, and maybe myself included, I'll have to raise my hand, about the play calling. If Michigan is staying with a ground and pound type attack, and we're going to say it's not good for recruiting big time quarterbacks. It's not good for being able to evaluate these players to see who's going to ultimately win the job. It's not something that's getting them prepared overall, for when they get into the teeth of the schedule. So I anticipate that being something after the quarterback battle that people are going to be arguing about.
Yeah, and I think we saw that firsthand last year after the Washington game. I mean, Michigan brought it to a Washington team that wasn't fully equipped at that point in time, and Michigan should have won the game, probably to the margin that they did. But in the style that they did it, really rubbed some people the wrong way, and there was people in the crowd like, oh, pass the ball. And I'm, what I'm saying? So it'll probably so it will probably be much of the same if I had to think. Now, where things really get interesting with this season for me is the fact that the offense, people are very assuming of it right now. Like, there's a lot of assumptions of what's going to happen and what isn't going to happen and yada, yada, yada. And for better or for worse, some people think no matter what, they're going to open it up. Some people think they're just going to, run ground and pound and do their thing until Ohio State comes or until one of those bigger games comes, Michigan State, Penn State, whatever it may be. But I think that's the curious case of this year is like, what will they roll out? I mean, Josh Gaddis isn't here, and I know that his offense the offense last year wasn't necessarily his. It was a scheme he built, but a lot of the nitty gritty of it changed from the year prior because of Matt Weiss, right? The fingerprint that he had on it. And a lot of the formations had been brought over from the Ravens offense that Matt Weiss came from. And Sharon Moore changed a lot of the offensive lines schemes. And we saw a lot of differences there. And that even came from the Ravens as well, as they were relying more on, gaps and powers rather than pins and pulls, even though they're kind of hybriding all three of them, right? So, which you don't see too often. Usually it's more of a concentration. So my curious case this year, Dennis, is what will they roll out? It's going to be interesting. And I think that's something they enjoy, is the fact that, like, if we're sitting here talking about wondering what they're going to roll out, chances are the other teams in the conference are too. And the teams on their schedule waiting. And, I think mystery is a good thing to have, so long as the mystery is a good thing. And they have all the personnel to suggest that they can make a couple of things work. I think this team can ground and pound. I think they have the quarterback to air it out. I think they have the weapons to. I think at the end of the day, we're not going to see one side or the other. I think we're going to see, for the first time in a while, again, I'm not trying to make any rash predictions here, but we should see one of the most balanced attacks they've ever had. I mean, on paper, they have every reason to present it. So.
Well, I like running the football. I also like a team to have an identity, and I also think that they should play to their strengths. So all those things sound like they could be a little bit different. Like, it's just, the Ravens, and neither are the quarterbacks. Although McCarthy, can do some of that pin and pull stuff that you're talking about, but he's not Lamar Jackson, so they're not going to run. They're not going to have the Ravens offense. Maybe some of those concepts, but it was just, was it 3 years ago that San Francisco played Kansas City in the Super Bowl? They ran their way. I mean, that was nothing but run, turn it around, Jimmy G, run the ball, and it got them to the fourth quarter within a play of beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And then what the Wolverines did last year, I mean, it worked. So you'd say, why would they go away from that? And that's what we know. Harbaugh, if there is an identity about him, that's it, and that's success. But Haskins isn't here, and both Edwards and Corum caught more passes than Haskins last year. I mean, the running backs, and I know they want to run the ball, but they might catch the ball just as much as they're, running it between the tackles. So I think just from that standpoint, they're going to throw the ball more. You mentioned Weiss. I mean, a quarterback coach, he's going to throw it more. And then Ronnie Bell gets into the mix. I mean, they have to throw it way more. And I just think that whatever the balance is from you and I looking at it and saying these games are going to be really easy out of the gate, hopefully they are, and they can just come up and throttle up, and do all those kind of things.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, like, on paper, that is what should happen, right? It's just a matter of, that's the curious case.
Yeah, paper's fun in July, and paper, we really talk about it in August, and then as soon as September 3 comes around, we throw it all out of the window, and it doesn't really matter. DJ has a bold prediction. Michigan leads the nation in offensive plays of 40-plus yards for the second consecutive season. The offense is going to serve smoke. He predicts go blue. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's one thing people really overlooked last year was, like, they ran the crap out of the ball, no doubt, but they also were explosive when they needed to be. They were very cerebral. They didn't take many opportunities downfield in certain scenarios, but when they took those chances, more times than not, they were successful in comparison to the rest of the country. Clearly, most 40-plus yard plays in the country says enough about that. So their explosive rate, which is something that they really focus on, is what is our explosive rate and how efficient are we when we're trying to be explosive? Because what you see with a lot of football teams, especially in college, is they really try to overcompensate for explosiveness. Like, they're trying to be explosive every play, and that's just simply not sustainable. And so what this offense is trying to do, and what they did last year, was, kind of wear teams down to the point where being explosive was easier for them. If you think about it, you run 3 straight, 4 straight, 5 straight run plays, which Michigan did efficiently last year. And all your receivers have been doing is blocking. But that front 7 for the opposing team has been trying to, get to the runner, and they continue to have success running the ball. And we all know what a hurry up offense running the ball successfully does to a defense. It wears them down. And then it got to the point where once Michigan did that 3, 4, 5 times in a row, that defense wear down. They go to the explosive rate play, and your speed always beats the defense at that point, because it's hardly about technique at that point. It's about the fact that your receivers are fresh because they've hardly done anything in this series, and you have so many that are expendable to move around. You get fresh legs out there, and it's just a race at that point, and you let your quarterback throw it. Your the front seven can't rush the passer, and that's what really it boiled down to put it in like simple terms. And so, yeah, I don't think that we're wrong in making that prediction at all, that they'll do that again this year, just because like they're almost identical, and like they're better too. Like on paper, they're a better offense. Like Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, there's a very good chance they're both better than Haskins was last year, in different ways and for different reasons. Like Haskins was one of those rare cases of a bell cow running back you don't see nowadays as much, but they'll be more effective as a duo, I think, than Haskins and Corum were in certain scenarios. So you think about that. You think about the receiving core, which you mentioned, but you add in guys like Darius Clemens. And then you talk about one thing we don't talk about enough is both tight ends coming back, which are huge. Because we're not going to sit here and pretend like Cade McNamara's job is gone. Like it's still his. It's still his to win. JJ McCarthy still has to take it from him. And Cade McNamara loves throwing it to his tight ends. And like we talk about how much they'd have to develop chemistries with the pass catchers. And like both of your tight ends are back. All of your receivers are back. Plus you add Bell. I mean, it's just those two backs are back. And we saw how much he targeted them last year. They get better in the interior of their line, and they lose Stuber on the outside, but they replace him with another tackle, and they hold on to Ryan Hayes. So it's just one of those things where like, yeah, like I don't think you're wrong for making that prediction. I forgot what your username was, but I don't think you're wrong for making that prediction. It's rash because you're calling it a number one, but like there's no reason to believe they won't be a prominent finisher in that statistic, like top 5, top 10.
Yeah, Eric All, remember the lightning bolt against Penn State? That was 47 yards, so that fit into the 40-plus yards. And then Ronnie Bell, who's coming back in that first game, that's where he got hurt. He had a 76-yard touchdown.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'll buy the explosive plays from Tut. I think that's what his name was, DJ Tut. All right. So today, I don't know how you're looking at today, but Michigan has a new president, and his name is Santa. Oh, no. If you want to read more about him, Josh Henschke, the publisher of the Maize and Blue Review, has a story up there. Why hiring new president Santa J. Ono is a win for Michigan athletics. Do you know anything about St. Nick coming in Christmas in July for the Wolverines?
Yeah, I think the consensus is everybody loves this hire, and the reason they do is because it's just a total 180 from Mark Schlissel. Mark Schlissel, the former president, it's no secret he hurt athletics. He made coaches' lives harder. There wasn't a ton of support. Anytime that they wanted to do something with athletics, like you knew you were going to have to go through Schlissel, and that was not going to be easy. And that wore on some of those coaches. And so when Schlissel was gone, I mean, that was celebrated. That was rejoiced by athletics because of how difficult he made some of their lives and just how much he really like neglected athletics. And there's certainly things that I'm sure he did right while he was in office with academics and with, becoming number one public university and all those things. But it's no secret that the switch is welcomed, and Michigan having to move on from a president that didn't step down in his own right. It was new and hadn't happened. So they go out there, they get a replacement, and internally and seemingly externally, this is a home run, right? Like everybody seems to enjoy this. The Cincinnati alumni are very high on it. They've spoken highly of Ono, Santa, whatever you want to call him. But really what they're getting in him is a guy who prioritizes and celebrates and understands the importance of athletics. And we talk about NIL, which is on the screen. And that's one thing I was going to bring up with him is we're expecting to see the NIL get that elevation and get that push and get the support from the administration, because at the end of the day, like your president is really your final written rule. Like that's the final signature you need to get on big time program changing decisions. Michigan couldn't get that in the past, and it was a challenge to even present it. And now they're getting somebody who is going to encourage it and welcome improvements to the athletics so long as it makes sense for the university. And I think one thing we saw about Ano is how much he enjoys being at the sporting events. Cincinnati alum said he still returns for Bearcats football games, right? And he's not even the president anymore. He lives in Canada, at British Columbia, right? So for him to do that shows how much he A, cares about it genuinely, and B, for him to be welcomed back after he left shows how much that he was revered while he was there. So all things considered, you talk about the vetting from the schools he was at before. You talk about the proof in the pudding of how much he prioritizes athletics, and we're in an era where that's a necessity. Like, that has to happen. Like, that is necessary at this point for them to hire someone who understands the importance of athletics. And in talking with Jordan Acker, the no longer the chair, but was the chair of the Regents, that was a huge thing for him. And for the the Board of Regents as a whole was they wanted to bring someone in who understood the importance of athletics, didn't ditch away everything else. Like, he's still going to iron out, cross T's, dot the I's, prioritize academics just as much as he would athletics. But the stark contrast in that ratio between Schlissel and him it's night and day. And so that's why it's such a big home run for Michigan, because people have been clamoring for this, and I feel like now they're finally getting it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you handed Schlissel a basketball and football, he could tell you which one was which. So the new guy coming in feels like a breath of fresh air. And I don't think you get any argument about this. If you have a president, an athletic director, and a Regents that are all working together with a football coach, that is going to be nothing but good news. Yakov saying that the previous president hated sports. That would have never gotten him fired. It was more personal matters. That's right. It was more personal matters when it came down to that. I don't know. What about Treppa, who's going back from our football discussion? You mentioned film, but Treppa says no one had film on Michigan's offense or defense last year. They won't catch anyone by surprise. Thoughts?
Well, they have a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator, so I think they will. I don't think Minter is going to have a carbon copy of Mike McDonald's defense. I think it's going to be the same foundational defense with the same schemes and ideas in mind, but he's obviously going to put his own seasoning on that and salt and pepper it. One counter to that is that how many times have we watched Ryan Day's offense at Ohio State? I mean, it's like, how many years have we watched that? But still, every year he goes out there and, they score the points they score. So having film out there, I don't think we're talking about catching anyone by surprise defensively. Now, on offense, again, it's going to look different. I mean, we're not going to see the same exact thing we saw last year. It's not just going to be ground and pound football, right? So, again, like when we're talking about film, the film is going to change this year offensively, I think. The defensively, it's marginally probably going to be different. But regardless, like, every team is on film. I mean, Alabama's on film every year. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't really get that point just because it's on film every year. Like, it's their job to come up with new schemes.
Yeah, I think film's a little bit overrated. Michigan, it was like one of the things that Harbaugh, one of the reasons that he used for, blacking out the spring game last year is that, Mike McDonald is going to, spring this defense. And, they had their defensive ends standing up. That's like, ooh, I know there's other things that you can get in. I think personnel wise, the player that you're watching, looking for some tendencies, and there are some things like that. But, the overall X's and O's of the schemes, like, come on. I think that's a little bit overrated. And, like the film, are they – it's the same thing like is it hurt or help Michigan film-wise that they have two quarterbacks? The teams have to prepare for two. Are they going to prepare for – Alex Orji in short yardage situations because they saw him in the spring game? You have to dedicate, a couple snaps in your practice. I don't know. Those things seem to be a little bit overrated to me.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Michigan really values that kind of stuff, especially Harbaugh. Like, he is definitely a film guy, and film is extremely important and everything. Let's see. Ohio had 11 weeks of film. Michigan dominated both games. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it says here Ohio had 11 weeks of film by 11-27-21. Iowa had 12. Michigan dominated both games. And that's a good point. Again, like, you can have all the film in the world. Like, you still have to beat that team on the field physically and technically and X's and O's. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't just come down to X's and O's. Like, those are dudes out there, and they're going to run into each other, and someone's going to have to bring the other one down. It's not just X's and O's. Now, don't get me wrong. Scheme is like, if you don't have scheme, you don't have anything. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, we're not going to base everything off of film here. We're not going to pretend like Michigan had a successful year under Josh Gaddis and like his, what was it, his third or fourth seed? I can't remember off the top of my head as the OC. We're not just going to pretend that that was his first year rolling out Michigan's offense. We're not You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I understand maybe if we talked about it with Mac's perspective, like, because how he presented that professional defense. But again, like, we'll see some sprinkles from Minter. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Yakov saying that Phil Steele, this is strange because Yakov, I don't know if you're in the studio with me here, but I got to tell you, just prior to coming out, was the reason I didn't send the link to Justice is I was in communication with Phil Steele, and he's coming on the show tomorrow, which is amazing. That this is the first time that anybody's mentioned Phil Steele on this show, and then he's coming on the broadcast tomorrow at 1:00. Phil Steele projects Alabama and Ohio State will meet in the title game. What does Brandon say about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with projecting that by any means. I think anyone can justify that, just without even like looking into the situation. If someone says, "Hey, I think Alabama and Ohio State will play for the national title," no one's gonna like be like, "Yeah, it's not inherently wrong." Like that's fine. Like, I'm totally fine with that projection. Ohio State's offense is absurd. I mean, they returned C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. The offensive line is strong coming back, and we know how good Stroud is. I mean, I know last season he took a lot of sacks against Michigan, but if you look at that game, like some of the passes he made, some of the catches Smith and Jigma made, but then you take a look at every other game they played. You take a look at that Utah game. I mean, Utah was seemingly running away with that game at one point, but Ohio State's offense was just excellent. And defensively, I think there's question marks for Ohio State. I still don't think that that's going to go away, and I think that's the big thing we're going to figure out from them. We know how good the offense is. As far as Alabama, I mean, Alabama is Death, Texas, and the Tide. Like that is college football right there. It's what it's been for the past 10, 15 years, ever since Nick Saban took over. And so we know what they have the Heisman Trophy winner coming back. Anytime you have that at your quarterback position, you're going to be a favorite and a title contender. So it's so hard to project a title game, 2 out of 130. So, but yeah, I think Phil Steele's fine in projecting that. If I don't ask me for a projection on a national title game right now. I would be fine. I would co-sign that one. If it's gun to head, hey, do you think this could happen? Yes. Like, I think that's 100% realistic and attainable projection right there.
Yeah. I think Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson have them. I'm sorry, not Clemson. I think Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State have the most talent. So, and I think they are the favorites. So picking 2 of those 3, and it was a long time since Georgia. It took them a long time to actually win the national championship. So coming back, and it's hard to repeat.
Right.
Alabama and Ohio State, I think if you had 100 people and you said you have to pick, who's going to be in the championship game, I would guess that would be the most popular pick of 100 people.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's just those two programs are undeniable annually, and they have 2 extremely good quarterbacks coming back, 2 Heisman finalists coming back, and they rounded out with a ton of weapons offensively. And I don't think there's many questions for Alabama defensively as much as there is for Ohio State. So. No,
and who else would you put in there? You would go to Georgia. You're going to say Texas A&M. I mean, you want to put Texas A&M in there? You put anybody from the now? I know it's still the Pac-12, although they're just going to have 10 teams coming up. I'm not putting anybody from the Pac-12 in there, or you want to pick Oklahoma State? Texas A&M seems to be a popular team. You want Notre Dame? You put them in there?
Well, I guess you kind of have to start bringing up USC. I mean, they definitely have talent. I mean, you think about Caleb Williams is in at quarterback, and you've got a lot of weapons. But again, it's kind of a pipe dream at this point, like for them to get to that level this year right away. But there's no denying the fact that they have, the star quarterback, and they have weapons. They brought in the Pitt receiver Addison too, and he's probably going to be their best weapon offensively. And Caleb Williams is exactly who we saw that he was last year. So just a question of defense, and like Lincoln Riley. Really haven't seen like a proven phenomenal defense since Alex Grinch left. So we'll see what happens there.
Do you have another minute? Because if you do, I have a question.
No doubt.
And a topic that I've been talking about nonstop, and it's Dante Moore, who committed to Oregon. Now, I had somebody tell me, hey, your projections and what you hear could be different, but somebody told me that half dozen jobs and $3.5 million from a Michigan standpoint, that's what they thought that they had to beat. And I was just thinking about what a job would be worth at Nike. I don't know, maybe $100,000 a year, maybe more, maybe less. I mean, but so I took it down to a $500,000 a year that would be worth, and then for 4 years, so I took that, added another 2 million, and then there was charter flights. I figured out to be like a $6 million total package. Now, Brandon, the Michigan fans I have seen, they're like, well, Oregon's cheating. They promised him this money. It's also illegal to promise jobs and charter flights. Michigan didn't really have to, promise any flights. They could send him a car, wherever he lives in the greater Detroit area. Promising jobs, whatever those jobs are worth, you could come up and say, okay, $6 million. We don't promise that to you. We promise you the opportunity. Maybe they wink at him. I don't know. So the part about money, Dan Wetzel wrote this column, you can't cry about money, but, this was about money. But how much do you think, Michigan fans can look at the 6 million total and understand why, whether it's a salary cap, however you look at it, that Michigan didn't want to go, around 6 million or above 6 million?
This is the part of college football recruiting where I'm like, all right, how do we navigate this? Well, first off, if you take a look at Oregon, like why on earth would a high-end top national talent go to Oregon? A new head coach, conference is falling apart, haven't been to a college football playoff. They went to one with Mariota, right? I think, and that wasn't even a playoff.
Yeah.
Was that a playoff?
Yeah, it was. I think it was the first one. They went to
I think it was the first one. So, they haven't been to a playoff since then. They haven't really been particularly close. Like they haven't had. I mean, they beat Ohio State last year, yes, but like we know the trajectories each one of those teams had, and they're different. So it's an odd time to be like, yeah, I'm going to go play football at Oregon. I love the future at Oregon. I mean, they're selling hope with their new head coach. They've lost all of their head coaches before this one. I mean, Willie Taggart left, Mario Cristobal left. They had to fire Helfrich. So, it's just one of those things where, and then of course, Chip Kelly left. So it's just one of those things for me where it's like, it's clearly about money. Like, I mean, he's not going to Oregon for any other reason, right? Like we can all agree on that. And I want to also say, like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's if all those things are accurate and like these things play out the way they're supposed to, because what do we know? We know that a lot of promises aren't being followed through on. That's like the big thing we've been talking about this past week has been a lot of kids are getting to campus, not getting what they're promised to get money-wise, job-wise, whatever it may be, and they're quote-unquote pissed about it, right? That's what happened with Addison at USC. That's the rumor right now, is that the new receiver at USC, who Lincoln Riley pulled out of the transfer portal from from Pitt. And again, we're making promises for transfer portal kids now, so this thing's getting way out of whack. And apparently, according to reports out of Southern Cal, like he's upset. So Michigan, like, from their perspective, like, what do you do about this? Your in-state quarterback's getting like all these absurd promises from Oregon that, like if you're Michigan, you're sitting there thinking, you're laughing at that sheet. Like you're laughing at it. Like if he gets that, I will eat a hat. Like that would be some extreme type of stuff for him to get. And like, I wouldn't be shocked if it's what they promised. It's just, there's a lot of people promising a lot of stuff right now. And a lot of it's not going to happen. So I have questions, right? Like, I don't know. And so look, like, how does this impact Michigan? Well, first on the surface, like, obviously people are going to poke fun at Michigan. We've already seen some columns out, like Wetzel publishes hit piece on Harbaugh recruiting and all of that.
Hit piece.
Like, I get it. Like, it's really easy for people to target Michigan because Harbaugh came in here and created the target that's on his back by all the, I shouldn't say he created it, but the hype surrounding him made it easier for him to have a target on his back. So anytime you can like go get it, they do. And he's not good with media. So like media is very quick with Harbaugh, right? So of course, on the surface, when Jim Harbaugh doesn't land the in-state quarterback who's a 5-star and all that, of course they're gonna bait it, right? And of course they're gonna make it look bad. And of course it doesn't look good. And internally, Michigan did want Dante Moore, so it's not great that they lost him. But at what cost did they lose him? And at what cost would it have taken to get him, literally and figuratively? Because they've presented themselves as a transformational, non-transactional, and they want to, they don't want to promise things. They want, if they say all those things and they go out there and give one kid $6.5 million, what do you think all those kids in the locker room are going to say? What do you think Cade McNamara is going to come into the room and say? What do you think J.J. McCarthy is going to come into the room and say? Those guys are like better than, I mean, I don't know about Cade. Cade's more proven, of course. J.J.'s ceiling seems higher than Dante. So, of course, people are going to be upset about that, right? And then you do that, and it's going to create so many problems in your locker room. And that's Michigan's big point about all of this, is they don't want to create systemical issues within their locker room and within their program, because they're bringing in top dogs that are getting paid so much and feel so deserved, and then those lower end 3-star guys, you want to call them, like, aren't getting that type of money, and they're wondering why not. And then you have all this headbutting, and it creates so many problems that we've never had before in college football. And that's why I think Michigan, again, like, I know through bringing in Santana, like, they're going to ramp up this NIL thing, and they're going to get more serious with it, and there will be some more push for it. But I still don't think Michigan's going to go out there and do these types of things and give kids $6 million, because they know the systemical issues it will create long term, and that it's not sustainable for them as a university either. And like, I know that's not sexy, and I know that doesn't sound fun, and I know that they didn't get Dante Moore, but like, Jaden Davis is a 5-star in the next class. Feel really good about him. They have a 2-quarterback system right now, and 2 guys that are going to be there for at least one more season. So like, the 2023 class wasn't the biggest one, right? You think about that 2018 class where they didn't have to fill a lot of spots. They just wanted to fill certain roles, and they got guys like Hutch and Haskins and Bell, and the list goes on. And this seems like another one of those classes. And somebody said that Michigan losing Dante Moore in the class that they had was a program changer. It set their program back. And I disagree completely. Because in 2018, when they brought in the number 22 class in the country, composite, and I don't know what it was for Rivals, composite's what I like to go by personally, because it groups together everything, and I think that's more fair. I know we're Rivals, but whatever, piss me off or whatever. It's number 22 combined overall, okay? That class won the Big Ten. Like, that senior class was the one that changed this program. So if you want to talk about programs coming back, or this program being set back because Michigan's going to finish in the 20-25 spot more than likely, like, I completely disagree, because their recruiting fits, their recruiting identity, they're recruiting people who are going to come in and fit within their program, and they value the importance of that, and you don't have to, and that's okay. But that's what finally worked for them. That was finally the straw that broke the camel's back, was the class that came in here and had the guys like Hutch, Bell, Haskins, list goes on. So they're going to continue to do that and keep that at the forefront. And if stars want to come be here, then like, they're going to welcome that too, but they're not going to get in their hands and knees, give them $6.5 million and beg them to come. It's just not how they are.
Yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot there. The one thing I think that if Michigan ultimately gets Jaden Davis, you can look back and say, oh yeah, look, man, their plan, however it worked, heck, they don't even have to get him. They could get another guy from that class. They don't even have to get that guy. They could get somebody next year that decommits. And so there's a lot of different avenues that they could go. I do take a step back and look at it from a national perspective, even from a local perspective, from people that aren't just wired into every day about the moves for Michigan. And you've got 2 quarterbacks in Moore and Carr, who are the highest rated quarterbacks in my lifetime from the state of Michigan. Nobody was a higher rated quarterback than Dante Moore. And then we know about the lineage there of CJ Carr. So if I'm a national columnist and I didn't know that Harbaugh had offered him when he was 13 years old, then his old man has got to block him on his back, that, he was targeted to Michigan the whole time. And then you put NIL in Michigan's stance, which is over here, whether you agree with it or not. And most other teams and fans are over here like, let's go, let's get it going. And it creates a very interesting column to me. So I didn't feel like it was a hit piece, but I can tell you this, that most Michigan fans agree with you. I can also tell you about the divide in the locker room. Jim Harbaugh said as much when he was talking about, I think it was a podcast that he was talking with about, you give this guy, what's that going to be the effect of, how it's going to affect the rest of the guys. I talked to a former Michigan captain 2 days ago. He agreed with you. I know Henschke, I've read his stuff on the Den. He was talking about the divide, but I don't think so. I mean, is there going to be a divide between McCarthy, who's never started a game for Michigan? He's getting paid more name, image, and likeness, we found out in the last 48 hours, than Cade McNamara. So is that going to be a divide between those guys? I would think in the NFL, 1,000,000 times, like Aiden Hutchinson's coming in, he's going to be the highest paid player on that Lions defensive line. Are those other guys going to be like over there, like, we're really jealous and this is going to create a divide for our putrid defense? No, I think they're going to be happy that they're potentially getting a star. And I think that's how the football players view it. It's like, hey, if this guy could come in and help Michigan, good for him. People have been looking to get paid money. Players have for 100 years. And now it's happening. So now they're going to be pissed off when, you get a guy, a local guy and a quarterback, and Michigan's going to pay the money to him. I'm not buying it. I know everybody else is, but I'm out here, and sometimes I feel like, I sound like a crazy fan, but I don't agree with the divide in the locker room when it comes to the money.
Yeah, I think that there's certainly like a devil's advocate to it all, no doubt. Like 110%. Like it's not no question that wouldn't happen. But my side of it is that when it comes to stuff, I'm talking about like to that degree, man, like $6.5 million, 6 jobs, like to roll out. You talk about rolling out the red carpet. They rolled about like 6 red carpets out, right? I don't see Michigan getting to that point where they're forfeiting all of that and promising all of that. As far as like JJ making more money than Cade, I mean, JJ like does as much as he possibly can to market himself and like really puts himself out there and really pursues these things on his own. Like I went down to his camp and I asked his dad, like if he could, talk for a few. And he said that JJ handles all of his business on his own. Like anything he pursues it on his own. And again, like, I don't know for a fact if things have been set up for JJ behind the scenes more than Cade. I just know that JJ himself has, pursued NIL opportunities because he's extremely smart and business savvy, and he's handled it on his own. Not to say Cade McNamara hasn't. I mean, dude, he was in a Tom Brady fashion line. Like that's, I don't know how much he made, if any, but like that alone, it should be enough to be celebrated.
All right, one more on the feedback. I think we got caught up here. Well, there's 2. Travis saying that he'd rather have a 3 or 4 star that'll play 4 years than a 5-star that leaves early. Yakov saying many Michigan alum could be different, with non-alumni fans will be very angry if the U of M president is hands-on with NIL. They don't view that as his lane. What do you think?
Well, the good news is, Etta just committed to Michigan. 4-star.
That just happened?
Yeah, it just happened.
Got a breaking news sounder. So Eno Etta is the 11th. Wait a second. I've got more breaking news while we're at it. Former Wolverine Andrew Copp.
Yeah, to sign with the Wings.
5 years, $28 million for Copp. So, wow, what a day for the Maize and Blue. Copp coming back to patrol the ice at the Little Caesars Arena, and Eno Etta committing to the Wolverines. That's a big get, a 4-star. So the last 2, Collins and Eno Etta, those are 2 nice bookends for the Wolverines. That's a nice feather in your cap recruiting style. Mac Daddy is going to be all over that on the dad.
Yeah, I mean, look, like, again, like this class, again, I don't know, man. I don't think this class is going to be as bad as everyone's making it out to be. And like, Etta was the guy who got offered months ago. And when he got offered, it wasn't like he was a super high profile kid quite yet. And he's become that, through some like Twitter drama. But on top of that, because he's a really good player. And I remember my first conversation with Etta, and I've had a few, I've probably had like 4 or 5, but regardless, my first conversation with him, the big topic of convo was about how he really fits the mold at Michigan and looks and plays like the defensive ends who have come through here and been successful. Kwity Paye. He said he watched a ton of film on Kwity Paye and paid attention to it a lot before he was even offered, in the season prior. Of course, he paid a ton of attention to Aiden Hutchinson and paid a ton of attention to David Ojabo. But he's a guy who highly academic, could go to Michigan if he wasn't a football player, was originally interested in Michigan because of 2 reasons, the academics and the edge play. And I was so intrigued by him when they first offered him, and to see them pull it off despite everything that happened in between is hopefully a sign of good things to come, so we can get some people off the ledger a little bit. But I think Eno Etta is your next great edge at Michigan, 100%. He just looks the part, has all the physical tools and attributes, and he has the intangibles, I think, to come in here and be one of the next great edge rushers for Michigan, because they seemingly produce one every year.
Coincidence that Saint Nick comes to town on the very same day that Santa comes to Ann Arbor. The 11th verbal commitment that Etta happens within like minutes, if not seconds, of the new president being minted, and that bag that Santa's bringing to town is a rush end. Coincidence or not, you tell me. And he's supposed to be athletic friendly, NLI friendly. I mean, what's Eno doing here?
I think it's just a coincidence, but I mean, I'm all for it, man. I mean, I mentioned this. We've been covering so much baseball. And so now that we're dipping our toes back into football, somebody said to me yesterday, they were just kind of upset about some of my tone, I guess, on the board, which is, it's just always literal. So if you're reading or if you're listening to this and you're wondering about my dialogue or dialect on the board, it's just literal. Like, I'm never being rude. I'm very literal, if you haven't noticed by now. So, I mean, again, like, I just want to walk people off the ledge. And so the reporting lately has been like, okay, sometimes the negativity isn't from the reporter, it's from the event. And so, we've unfortunately had to report some negativity lately on NIL, Dante Moore not coming, and recruiting's just been tough. Obviously, it's been the number one topic for Michigan over these past couple months, is the struggles there, quote unquote. So it's a huge win for Michigan. I really think, Etta is a guy who checks all your boxes from like a perspective of the physical tools in the frame and like how he compares and his pro comps and the guys he comps to before. And then you talk about the academic standards. Kid from Texas, you go get a win in Texas too. It's good for them. It's good for them.
Yeah,
I think he's a massive win.
I think it was OM talking about the bookends, and we do know it was a Jabo and Hutchinson last year. And the one thing about Collins,
Achiampong,
I pulled that off of a podcast because I wasn't sure how to say his name, and I'm still a Chumpong. Yeah, you pretty much got it. But the one thing about it, he's like 6'9" and weighs like 200 pounds. But if you look at Etta, he looks like he's ready to go.
Yeah, Etta physically is like there. Like he's ready to roll. I mean, he's a prospect I'm really excited about, and I have been since he was offered. I've been on this guy since they came in and made that offer to him, and Michigan State was after him and a couple other schools too. But I just think this is a huge win for them. I think Michigan has proven. But look, man, like, we can talk about recruits all day and how some of them develop and some of them don't, and it really all depends on where they're coming from. How the school that gets their commitment is going to develop them. And if there's one thing that Michigan has proven year in and year out that it can do, it's develop edge rushers. And it's guys who look like Etta and his frame. Like, I don't think his upper body is to the degree that Hutch's was. And I don't think that he is. I can't sit here and tell you he's going to be a first round draft pick. We wouldn't have said that about Hutch back then anyway. But he really does have a lot of similarities out of high school to those kinds of guys. Him, Ojabo was like super raw. I don't think he's as raw as Ojabo was. That's a rare and once in a lifetime type of thing. But, Hutch, Kwity Paye, these guys are like, Etta stands right next to those guys out of high school and is on the same degree, probably, if not better than them out of high school. So I think it's a huge win for Michigan because they've proven how much better they can make these players when they get them.
Yeah, Chumpong, he came. You mentioned Paye. He mentioned the legacy of people that he considered big brothers like Paye and Ojabo. And I threw up a map of Africa, and Kwity Paye is from West Africa and Guinea. Ojabo born a little bit further in east, but I think that's still West Africa and Nigeria. And then in between both Nigeria and Guinea is Ghana, where Collins is from. So, it's you've got the defensive ends and the pipeline from Africa there. Somebody just saying that, talking about the highest rated recruits. Michigan, remember, had Raylan Wilson, but I believe Yakov is right, Cabana. And now you've got Etta at 239 that they're working off. They're helping out with some of the rankings there. And I think that sounds true without having all the numbers in front of me. I think Mr. 22 has put the numbers up there correctly.
Yeah, and Cabana is a great example of Michigan's strategy in recruiting. Like, they're going to slow play the big guys who are going to wait until that signing period, the first signing period, or slow, shortly before or fall, just in general. They're going to slow play those guys, wait till the official visits if they do them in the fall. And then guys like Cabana, who were like, I mean, Cabana was a 3-star in like the 400th marks, like somewhere in 400 to 500 when they got him. And, months later, here he is at 206. I know rankings aren't everything, but like clearly this guy has been camping well and has been showing out in 7-on-7. And they've, upped his ranking because of it. It's not just, oh, he committed to Michigan, let's bump him. That happened a long time ago. And they bumped him on the commit to Michigan, but like hardly. And now he's just taking a steady incline all the way up to nearly the top 200. And who knows how high his ceiling is, but a good example.
Great stuff. Is there anything else, baseball wise or?
Yeah, they got their pitching coach. I can't report it though. So,
okay.
Which is kind of a tease, my bad. But yeah, they got the pitching coach, so that's done. At this point, they're just trying to get their Dobo, the director of baseball operations, and that job was posted on the university website. So if any of you out there are trying to operate baseball, there's an option to apply for that. So they're looking for that, and that'll round out their staff. Dobos are interesting. Sometimes they can be a big deal. Sometimes it's like purely an organizational thing. Sometimes it's not. The way that their job was listed made it seem like they want this person to be involved in non-campus recruiting and directed and coordinated. So it is a pretty big deal in who they hire. So, but the pitching coach should be announced. I don't know, maybe this week, I would assume, but the deal is done and they do have him. So,
well, if the Dobo ever wants to come out here to Dexter, he can go down into my dojo, which I have right next to the studio over here. So that would be cool. Your mustache, that's kind of taking off here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's development.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. I'm trying to take it in the fall. I hope I do. I got a lot of like miles.
More managerial. I mean, you look like you could be sitting down in the dugout, calling the shots.
I got a lot of Miles Teller comparisons lately. That's been a popular pro comp for me. has been Miles Teller, and I've been like, you know what? You're right. I look exactly like him.
Do you walk around, with your shirt off, and you get
not quite?
You have some. What are those? They're not.
The aviators.
Aviators.
Yeah.
What's the other ones that are made out of rhinoceros bone? What are those called?
Ooh.
The shades that people like in Detroit.
Oh.
What do they call them? Maybe it's not a rhinoceros bone. Maybe it's some other kind of bone that they're made from.
Well, I know the Ray-Bans have like the Club Masters, and a lot of people wear those.
It's what Cunningham wears, Kate Cunningham.
Oh, Buffs.
Oh, it's buffalo horn. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Buffaloes. I don't know why I got to throw someone off when he said rhino. I should have immediately thought about Buffs. That's on me. It's on me.
These aren't Buffs. I can tell you that. What would 17, 18-year-old Dennis have done for $75K? Oh, anything, almost anything that wouldn't have, put me in jail.
You can ask 26-year-old Brandon the same question. So, well, not 26 yet, but my birthday is coming up. So I'm just starting to do that thing where I just round up.
Brandon Teller Justice. There it is. Thanks so much. The longest visit, and we didn't know we were going to have him until 1 second before the show. So great job.
Yes, sir.
See you later. You too.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Phil Steele.